Doggy is dead, and thank God for that. It was a massive waste of time and money that did real harm throughout America and around the world. But Elon Musk, of course, is not going to admit that it was a massive failure for anyone other than him. Here he is trying to defend against the claims that the programs that were cut did real harm.
Fraudsters necessarily will come up with a very sympathetic argument. They're not going to say, "Give us the money for fraud." That's not going to be what they say. Obviously, they're going to try to make these sympathetic sounding arguments that are false.
They're going to start an NGO and then
they're going to see NGO. It's going to be like the Save the Baby Pandas NGO, which is like, who doesn't want to save the baby pandas? They're adorable. But then it turns out no pandas are being saved. Okay, in this thing, it's just going to it's just corruption essentially.
So a couple of important things there. Side note, who wouldn't want to save the baby pandas? Yeah, I do. The issue is that I can't save them. Weirdly, he could set up an organization, put $2 billion into it. That wouldn't be fraudulent, by the way. That would actually save he could do that and still be the world's richest man. But he's not going to do it. So evidently we got an answer to the question, who doesn't want to do that? He doesn't, because he could do it for the equivalent of you using the change you find in your couch. He could do almost any of those things. When he doesn't, it's because he doesn't actually care. He prefers a number in an online account to, pandas continuing to exist. But his larger point there is a lot of these things are just fraud. Fraudsters, of course, are not going to admit that they're committing a fraud. They pretend that they're doing something good and admirable to get your money. And I was thinking about that. I think that's a pretty good point. And I don't think it's just NGOs that do that. I think businesses do that. I think businessmen do that. I think sometimes businessmen go on stage and say, I got a great product that's definitely gonna come out and it's definitely gonna be affordable. Buy my stock, keep me as CEO, give me a big pay package. And I think we've seen some great examples of that. Like for instance, this is totally hypothetical. Let's say that you were to brand yourself as being like a savior of the environment and you'd invented electric cars to stop climate change from happening, but then your company got into a position where you didn't need the EV subsidies anymore, not as much as other companies do. So you actually advocate for them to be killed. Now that's overall bad for the EV industry and it's certainly bad for the environment, but it benefits you as a businessman. It would be that sort. You're not gonna come out and say, I don't care about the environment. You pretend that you do. Okay, that's a good example, I think. Or what if once you'd gotten bored with the whole environment thing, you pretended that your whole shtick was protecting humanity, saying things like, we must preserve the light of consciousness by becoming a spacefaring civilization and extending life to other planets. That's what Elon Musk wants to do. He wants to make us a multi-planetary or multi-solar system species to save us and the light of consciousness. He's not just saying this stuff so that the government will continue to give his rocket building companies billions of dollars in contracts, right? But then I also learned from him that frauds would never come out and say that they're being frauds. So again, I think that this is the same thing we always see. It's just massive projection. I have another example, by the way. So he said when he bought Twitter, it was to save the world from San Francisco's mind virus. It's definitely that. It's concern and empathy for people that led him to create an even more toxic social media platform. It's not that he's just trying to censor the opposition, make it so that Twitter is no longer a good place to go to get accurate information about breaking news or to build communities. And it's also a great place to build his cult. It's not that at all. It's that he wants to battle the woke mind virus. Or when he says this is a battle for the future of civilization. If free speech is lost, even in America, tyranny is all that lies ahead. And we know that he was being honest there because after he bought Twitter, he definitely didn't violate the concept or the philosophy of free speech in a million different ways. And he definitely didn't support a tyrannical candidate for president. He didn't do any of that stuff. And so he goes on the interview and he says that if you don't deliver, you shouldn't get the funding. So if you say that you want to save the pandas and you're not saving the pandas, that's it. We cut off the funding. And that seems to make sort of common sense. Why would you continue to give someone money if they prove that they can't be trusted? Like for instance, if you promised that you were gonna come out with a Tesla Roadster and a year went by and 2 years went by and 5 years went by and even longer went by and you still had the money that you took in your deposits, but no Tesla Roadsters anywhere to be seen. Or when you say that the Cybertruck is gonna come out and it's years late and nobody's been able to get that $40,000 Cybertruck you pretended would be available, all that stuff when you can't be trusted for all the things that you said to hype up your stock price. It's weird that someone would keep you in a position of power and authority. So I kind of feel like, again, this projection and maybe the shareholders at Tesla should listen to him more seriously than perhaps he actually wants when he projects about DOGE and the cuts that he made at USAID, when really what he's saying describes his own con man tenure as the head of Tesla far better than the actual NGOs he's describing. But anyway, DOGE is dead. That's good news. But is it really? Like everybody's reporting that DOGE is dead. The organization is sort of being shut down, but is it actually shut down? There's reason to believe not so much, and we'll return to that in just a sec. But a lot of people are excited about it formally going away, and let's not allow it to go away without at least one more time acknowledging what an almost immeasurably epic failure it was in its stated goals, at least. So when he was first tapped to lead DOGE, remember it was his idea. Nobody else had ever thought about efficiency in government before. He came up with that in the same way that he invented electric cars and rockets, and I think he invented Mars actually. So he said he would cut $2 trillion within the first year. So then, before Trump even gets into office, he says he's gonna cut just $1 trillion instead. After a few months in charge, he downsized the promise further to about $150 billion. And of course, they didn't even get close to even that. And again, why would you keep putting him in positions in power if he proves he can't deliver? That's what he said you should have as your operating principle. So let's talk more about some of these numbers. This summer, DOGE said that it had saved America $52.8 billion by terminating government contracts. So Politico did an in-depth analysis. They could only verify $32.7 billion in actual claimed canceled contracts.
You know what TYT has always been about? Taking on the corrupt, greedy establishment. For us, it's the corporate media. We've been fighting that fight for over 20 years. For the cell phone industry, it's the same story. A handful of massive corporations ripping you off. That's why we're partnering with Noble Mobile. They're the only wireless company with the same mission as ours, to fight back. Their Noble plan offers unlimited data for just $50 a month. But here's the best part. For any data that you don't use, you get cash back. Real money you can spend however you want. Stop letting your unused data pad the pockets of billionaires. With Noble, you take control over your data. And by switching to Noble, you're directly supporting TYT in our mission of bringing you honest, independent news. So give Noble a try and make the switch today. Scan the QR code on the screen now or visit go.tyt.com/plan. That's go.tyt.com/plan.
For a total savings, once you factor in the massive amount that had to be repaid to workers who had been illegally fired and all the lawsuits and all that, a savings of just $1.4 billion. So he promised $2 trillion, they delivered $1.4 billion. And that's so charitable to pretend that all of that is an actual savings when we have lost so much of what we already paid for. Those workers are fired, they're not coming back. They were doing real work. So this isn't even actually a savings. It's literally just less money being spent, even though we're all suffering because of it. And to give an example of how ridiculous their attempts to explain the funding that they were supposedly saving were, in one case, DOGE said that it had saved taxpayers $8 billion by canceling a single contract worth a maximum of $8 million. It's ridiculous. It's an absolute laughing stock. It always was. The idea that nobody's ever tried to save money in government before, we need Elon Musk to do that. And then he proves that he's not remotely interested in doing that. Now, I made clear in the intro to this, it failed in its stated goals to save that money. Now, it didn't fail in its actual goals. It didn't fail in Elon Musk's goals. Elon Musk doesn't actually care about saving $2 trillion of the taxpayer. What the hell does he care about that? He cares about crippling the ability of the government to investigate his companies. And they did succeed in that. They fired tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. They shut down whole organizations, and those are still gone. It didn't really save any money, but it did stop them from investigating him. Remember, Elon Musk routinely breaks the law. That's already been demonstrated for a long time. We just now can't really look into it anymore. And so, look, a lot of that damage continues to be done. USAID, that's gone. Analysis say that already hundreds of thousands of people have died as a result of that. And he's never gonna own up to that, of course. He comes up with these insane evasions to save his ego. In that same interview on the WTF podcast, he said that he made it so that every government payment now has to have a comment attached to it, and that'll save $100 to $200 billion a year. Literally no evidence presented that is true. But he would very much like you to pretend that it's true so that he again seems like a genius. This is all ridiculous. And I'll remind everyone, they also got other stuff out of this. Remember when Big Balls was beaten up by a couple of kids or whatever? And then they used that as a justification to invade DC with the National Guard? That was just the first domino. They've now done that to multiple states, and they got that thanks to DOGE. They sent the world's weakest little boy out there to be beaten up by 2 kids, and look at the good it's done for their movement, if not for the country. But I did say, I questioned whether DOGE was actually gone. And there's a couple of reasons you might say that. I'm gonna end this clip with just one though. So the department, you'll recall, had full access to untold reams of sensitive data, including individuals' financial information, health documents, and possibly union records. No one knows what exactly DOGE employees took, what they copied, where they stored it, or what Musk plans to do with it. They covered up what they were doing and what data they were filching by turning off monitoring tools and deleting records of access. They tampered with the code. God knows what they left behind. And so we might well have not seen the end of this in terms of the damage that could be done with blackmailing people, doxing people, revealing secret information, or potentially manipulating things even though they should not have any more access to those systems. And so maybe this story isn't actually done after all.